Hey, welcome back to the stash.
And I always liked the Frankenstein movie, the old one with Karloff. And in the Frankenstein movie, I always felt the monster is really the good guy. He didn't want to hurt anybody. All those idiots with torches were always chasing him up and down the hills. So I thought it would be fun to get a monster who was really a good guy. But nobody knew that. And to take a leaf from the Jekyll and Hyde thing, where he could change from a normal person into the monster. And I did the Hulk.
For the last week or so, I've been in a massive Hulk frenzy. Now, I've always liked the Hulk. I've read quite a fair bit of the Silver Age issues and occasionally gone into the more later stuff, but he hasn't really been a character I've fully had a phase with yet. That's all changed though after watching one certain film. It's a movie that got a lot of negative reviews, especially when it came out, but I put that aside and gave it a watch. That movie was Ang Lee's Hulk. Now, I'm not sure if it's because I'm familiar with the character's lore, or if it's just simply gelled with me more than others, but I loved watching that movie. I had a blast, and because of it, I got back into Hulk comics, but way more serious than before, which then led me to making this video about Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko's original Hulk run. Because from all the issues I had mainly read from the Silver Age, that one always stuck out to me. I really like the original Hulk comics despite all their flaws. The raw, weird, and colorful first 6 issues of The Incredible Hulk by those comic legends just have this certain charm to them that I can't quite get out of my head. I was always pulled towards this strange, imperfect comic series that felt like experiments from the Marvel bullpen. And there was nothing more experimental than Hulk's first 6 issues. These weren't polished superhero adventures nor perfectly structured arcs. They were more Marvel trying things, throwing ideas against the wall and seeing what stuck. And if I'm being honest, the series was a lot of things, from messy to chaotic and especially inconsistent, but I think that within those qualities was a big reason as to why I found them to be such a fun read. Because the Hulk's origin was a tragedy wrapped in a monster comic. It was a book caught between genres: science fiction, Cold War paranoia, horror, superhero fantasy, and I don't think it ever quite settled on what direction it wanted to go. I think that inconsistency, that constant identity crisis, gives the first 6 issues a charm that's hard to replicate today. But I won't lie, these 6 issues fall short in a lot of places, sometimes massively. Hulk is always at his best when the story is about him, about Bruce Banner, the monster within, the tragedy of the transformation. But every time the book shifts away from that and leans on the story's weak villain of the month or gimmick threats, I feel as if it then stumbles. Still though, there's a reason these comics stayed with me. There's something about their raw Silver Age electricity, something about Kirby's wild energy, Lee's dramatic narration, and Ditko's eeriness in issue 6 that makes this small run feel iconic in its own weird way. So today, we're going back to the very beginning, to the first Hulk story ever told, to the first 6 issues of The Incredible Hulk, to the era where Marvel didn't quite know what Hulk was supposed to be, but tried everything anyway. But hey, real quick, here at the stash, we're swinging for 30,000 subscribers. Now that's a tall order, I know, but with great power comes great responsibility, and all you gotta do is click subscribe. So if you're into the Hulk or just comic book deep dives, feel free to stick around. Also be sure to stay to the very end for another episode of Comics from the Stash. This time, I'll be going to my key Hulk issues from my very own comic collection. But, with that all said, let's get right back into the video. Issue 1 is iconic for one reason. It's one of the purest origin stories Marvel ever created. But reading this issue, it's almost shocking how strange, dark, and atmospheric it feels. This isn't the Hulk most people think of. He's got this ominous grey skin. He speaks almost as if he's a villain born into a world that already hates him. He's a scary, mysterious creature, and I love that. Issue 1 captures something that later runs often forget. Hulk began as a monster comic, A Silver Age experiment pulling from universal horror just as much as superhero storytelling. The Gamma Bomb, the test site, Banner rushing to save Rick Jones, all of it feels completely chaotic, but it works in a way where I think it's easily the best issue out of the 6. And when that blast hits, and Banner becomes the Hulk for the first time, Kirby draws him like something out of a nightmare. It's breathtaking, but even here, the series does something that I believe defines the entire 6-issue run for the worse. It pivots way too quickly into a villain that just isn't compelling. I think it would have done the story a load of good if it actually would just focus more on the eternal battle of Banner and the Hulk, as well as the constant hounding of the US Army. But for this story, we get the Gargoyle. The Gargoyle is emblematic of early Hulk's biggest weakness. He's another typical one-off Cold War caricature, and it won't be the last. Out of the bunch, I do think he was the most memorable though. His eventual turn on the red side was pretty cool to read, but overall, it was just still pretty weak. The story would get so interesting and compelling when it focuses on Bruce and the Hulk, but every time it cut away from Banner's internal struggle to focus on the villain, the issue loses its weight. It's annoying because when the story leans on Hulk, it's brilliant. You can feel Stan Lee and Jack Kirby figuring out the idea of the character in real time. You see the roots of the tragic monster trope Marvel would later perfect. You see the seeds of dual identity storytelling that would define Hulk for decades. So, yeah, issue 1 is messy, it's uneven, and it's certainly flawed, but nonetheless, it's unforgettable. If issue 1 was Marvel creating a monster, issue 2 is Marvel not knowing what to do with him yet, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Issue 2, though, features the infamous Toadmen, an alien race who attempt to conquer Earth. And I won't sugarcoat this, they're not great villains, they're not even good. They're literally just yet another filler foe for the hero to fight. You see, what I've noticed a lot is whenever Stan and the Bullpen didn't know what villain to make, they'd always resort to either an alien race trying to take over the world, or a Russian/Vietnamese war criminal. It just sucks that for these 6 issues, each villain was pretty much that. This issue is the clearest sign that Hulk didn't have an identity yet. It's part sci-fi, part horror, part superhero, part alien invasion. At the very least, this comic is important because it introduces something crucial to Hulk's mythology, Bruce Banner's inability to control his transformation. It's also the first issue where Rick Jones attempts to restrain Hulk. Now this dynamic, Rick desperately trying to help Banner, becomes the emotional spine of so many later stories, as well as for these 6 issues too. Rick feels almost as if he owes Banner everything, and no matter how difficult he gets, it's nice to see him never give up. But even though the Toadmen bring the issue down, the art is still incredible. Now it lists Kirby as the penciler and Ditko as the inker, but I swear some of these pages were done by Ditko. Overall though, it's just still so good. The alien designs, the dramatic angles, the way Hulk smashes through entire military units. Now Hulk issue 2 shows us a creative team searching for direction, and because of that, even with all its faults, it's still a fun read. When I went back and reread Hulk issue 3, I think I had the exact same reaction most readers have. What? This is when the comic started to have multiple stories within one issue, as opposed to just one full plot. The main villain of issue 3 is the Ringmaster, leader of the Circus of Crime. And look, I like the Circus of Crime as much as the next person. As a silly one-off Spider-Man or She-Hulk villain, sure, they can be fun, but for Hulk, even in the Silver Age, it was just a pretty boring read. It's annoying because the little brief moments we get of Banner's inner conflicts against the Hulk are once again fantastic, and anytime the story hones in on Banner's fear, his struggle with identity, his inability to contain the monster inside, the book shines. It just sucks that it never fully focuses on that because the villain of the month always gets in the way. Plus, what a waste of such a sick cover. So yeah. The Ringmaster and his circus was not the strongest material, and I swear if I had $1 for every time Marvel had Rick Jones somehow linked with the main character of a book. Issue 3 feels like Marvel asking, what even is the Hulk? What kind of stories can he work in? And the answer seems to be, not this. Issue 4 is a weird one. It has a lot of the same faults of the previous issues, but I think that it still came together really well in the end. Now the faults in question has got to be this comic's villain problem. The antagonist, Mongu, a supposed alien warrior, is actually a disguise worn by a communist agent trying to lure Hulk into a trap. It's a very we can't think of any other villain to use Cold War story, and like many Cold War stories of the early 60s, it can get quite boring. Mongu is not a compelling villain. He's not memorable, he's not threatening, and he has nothing to do with Hulk's emotional conflict. But again, the Hulk parts are great. Banner continues to wrestle with the fear of losing control. Hulk's power grows more unpredictable. Betty Ross's concerns deepen, and Rick Jones remains loyal even as the danger increases. This is also the issue where you realize Hulk's personality is still being built. It's still pretty different from what I believe is the more general consensus, but within the context of the story, I really enjoy the direction they've gone for the most part. Overall, issue 4 shows that even when the villain falls flat, the emotional beats can still work. Issue 5 introduces the ruler of Subterranea, Tyrannus. And yes, if you're noticing a pattern of underwhelming villains beyond that of me mentioning it a lot, you're not imagining it. Tyrannus is overall a pretty bland and forgettable character, minus his name, and I don't think he fits within a Hulk comic. He's more of like a adventure fantasy villain, something you'd find in a random Thor issue or something like that. But once again, the villain plot drags down the issue. It's annoying because there's still elements that somewhat save issue 5 from being completely bad, but I just don't think it's enough. I do like that with Betty becoming a hostage, it forces Hulk to act, which in turn means Bruce Banner's concern for her and Rick Jones' increasing bravery keep the story grounded. These human moments continue to be the strength of the run. The problem is simply this: the book still hasn't found a villain who challenges the Hulk emotionally or thematically. For comparison, by the 6th issue of their series, Thor had Loki, Spider-Man had the Vulture and Dr. Octopus, the Fantastic Four had Doctor Doom and Namor. Hulk, on the other hand, had the Circus of Crime, Gargoyle, and Tyrannus. Now, issue 5 proves something important, whether it's intentional or not. The Hulk isn't defined by his villains, he's defined by his struggle. And when the book leans into that struggle, even the weak issues have strong moments. Issue 6 is the moment the run feels different, because for the first and only time in the 6 issues, Jack Kirby steps aside and Steve Ditko takes over both pencils and inks. And with that, you can feel the shift immediately. Ditko's art gives Hulk a different energy. It's more eerie and unsettling. Where Kirby's Hulk felt huge and operatic, Ditko's Hulk feels creepy and unpredictable, and honestly, it fits the tone beautifully. But then we get to the villain, the Metal Master, and yeah, once again, the villain is the weakest part of the issue. Metal Master can manipulate metal, everything metallic bends to his will, and on paper, that's a great power to use against the Hulk. But he doesn't drive the plot emotionally, nor is he actually that smart. Issue 6, at the very least, might be one of the best visually of the entire run. Ditko gives Hulk this unsteady, shadowy presence. He looks caught between two worlds, the human world and something darker, and fittingly, this is the last issue, for the title is cancelled. When you read all 6 issues back to back, you feel something unusual. This was a comic trying to figure itself out and ultimately falling flat. Marvel didn't know who the Hulk was yet, and that's fine. Luckily, they did quickly found their footing within the pages of Tales to Astonish. I actually really like those issues. Lee, Kirby, and Ditko, though, were experimenting with tone, genre, and even Hulk's personality, and that's why this run feels so uniquely alive. Now, I've compiled a short list of what I believe to be the strengths and weaknesses of the run. So, for the strengths, I wrote Hulk himself, ranging from the tragedy, the monster, and the duality, Banner's guilt and fear, Rick Jones' loyalty, Kirby's explosive monster energy, Ditko's eerie finale in issue 6, the Silver Age rawness, and that sense of invention happening in real time. Whereas for the weaknesses, I've got the villains, the unfocused issues that prioritize too much on gimmicks, the Cold War tropes, the tonal confusion, and the lack of a real emotional antagonist throughout the entire series. And yet, while every issue certainly didn't hit, I still had fun. It's messy, chaotic. I mean, it jumps from circus hypnosis to alien invasions to communist imposters to underground kingdoms, but all of that weirdness makes it memorable even amidst the faults. There's a Silver Age charm to this run that modern comics just don't capture. You can feel the energy of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby just playing around, throwing ideas onto the page at lightning speed. And then there's Ditko's issue, a small but powerful reminder that the Hulk can be unsettling, tragic, and unpredictable. Now, these comics aren't perfect, far from it, but they're important. They're the blueprint for a character Marvel eventually perfected. And even when the villains fall flat, the stories about Hulk don't. Because the Hulk, I believe, is defined by what he is. A man trapped inside a monster trapped inside a man. And that duality, that emotional core, is what kept these comics alive for me all these years. So when I go back and read these 6 issues, I see the birth of something iconic. I see Stan Lee and Jack Kirby trying to write a modern Frankenstein. I see Kirby redefining what a monster comic could look like, and I see Ditko putting a strange, unsettling twist on Hulk's world. Not to mention that this is also the foundation of a character who will later become one of Marvel's greatest creations. But yes, the villains are weak, yes, the stories stumble, yes, the tone is inconsistent, but through all the flaws and experiments, one thing stays true. The Hulk is fun. Weird, chaotic, emotional, explosive fun. And sometimes, that's all a comic needs to be. Welcome back to another episode of Comics from the Stash, and for today we got some of my key Hulk issues from my very own comic collection. Now, I do have quite a few Tales to Astonish issues, but I thought that since I might make a video on that series, I'll leave it for that one. But so to start off, we have one of the king size special issues for Hulk. It is King Size Special Issue 1. Then a pretty big key, especially if you're a Guardians of the Galaxy fan, it is the first comic appearance of Rocket Raccoon. Then with issue 162 of The Incredible Hulk, we have the first appearance of Wendigo. Now for this one, I got it from America. I didn't actually travel there, of course, but issue 141 of The Incredible Hulk, the first appearance of Doc Samson. Now I actually just picked this one up the other day. I really love the cover here. It is issue 115 of The Incredible Hulk. Now this one is easily one of my favorite covers out of the bunch. We got this year. It is issue 105 of Hulk. And last but definitely not least, I have heaps more Hulk comics, but this was the main ones that I sort of really like in my collection. It is issue 102, the big premiere issue of his new series. But that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because here, any support means so much. And yeah, thank you guys again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.